Hello, my name is Henry Keane. This is News Bullet at UATV. Welcome to the Daily Show. Today in the episode, Russian major oil refinery producing 20 million tons annually has just stopped too, and yes, it were Ukrainian drones. War and peace, Ukraine and Russia, who wants what? Explained in Life and Death Easy Terms for you. New York Times got on board a old Ukrainian sports plane that now is hunting Russian drones in Ukrainian skies. One of Russia's largest oil refineries shuts down after being struck by Ukrainian drones. I'd like to stress out here, these strikes were carried out before Ukraine declared ceasefire. The strike was successful and it caused a fire and damaged 3 of the refinery's 4 primary crude distillation units and several secondary processing units just as well. The Kirishakh refinery has a capacity of about 20 million tons a year, which is about 400,000 barrels per day. In recent years, it has processed about 20 million tons annually, accounting for as much as 7% of Russia's total oil refining output. Since the beginning of the year, Ukraine has carried out more than 20 strikes on Russian oil infrastructure, inflicting enemy losses of more than $7 billion. But Ukraine moves on and now has the ability to strike Russia distances significantly exceeding 1,500 kilometers. That covers a quarter of vast Russian territory in any direction that poses more than 70% of 146 million people under direct threat and also exposing them to Ukrainian drones, states Bloomberg. Ukrainian drones are regularly hitting targets deep inside Russia, reaching to the very Ural mountains and communities where most people had seen the war as very distant problem. Well, not anymore. The situation is changing and dramatically.
The strike carries particular symbolism for Yekaterinburg, which was long seen as beyond the reach of war. The city, known as Sverdlovsk in Soviet times, lies on the eastern side of the Urals, roughly 1,700 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, and served as a rear base during World War II when factories were moved there for safety because it was considered to be outside the range for attacks from Europe, Bloomberg.
Well, I think it is best to explain it now. Ukraine practically accepted Putin's ceasefire. Moreover, it offered extra 2 days to it to make it effective as of midnight, 6th of May, tonight. And Ukraine has been practicing what it is preaching, following its own ceasefire from midnight 12:00 sharp. Meanwhile, Russia has clearly demonstrated it needs no peace. It is just craving a respite to have its military parade while continuing its terror. Just hours ago, 2 UAVs were recorded hitting a kindergarten building in the central part of the city of Sumy. A body was found under the rubble. Murdered woman was a security guard at this very kindergarten. Also, Kharkov, an enemy UAV strikes. The explosion sparked a fire covering 120 square meters, and neighboring property were also damaged. Also, same story in Kherson. Enemy drone strikes caused fires in apartments in high-rise buildings. Rescuers saved 3 women there. One is a limited mobility person from the smoke-filled premises and managed to extinguish all the fires. Same in Dnipro. 4 people murdered and 19 injured. Russians attacked 4 districts in the region. Rescuers are currently at work to cope with the aftermath of this terrible terror attack.
Throughout the night, the Russian army also launched strikes with various types of drones. In particular, Ukraine's defense forces neutralized nearly 90 attack drones alone. There were also missile strikes. In total, as of 10 a.m., the Russian army had committed 1,820 violations of the ceasefire regime: shelling, attempted assaults, airstrikes, and the use of drones. As of today, we can confirm that the Russian side has disrupted the ceasefire regime. Based on the evening reports from our military and intelligence, we will decide on our further actions. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on X.
Well, this Russian position obviously requires increased pressure on the Russian regime, including new rounds of sanctions, isolation, accountability for Russian crimes, and increased support for Ukraine in all areas. No internet in Moscow, and that is not because Ukrainian drones did that. However, it is because Ukrainian drones can do that. Putin himself turns off the internet because he's afraid for his own life and his image. Well, what is left of it? Learn details in this story for you.
Massive restrictions are planned in Moscow ahead of the so-called Victory Day parade on May 9th. The entire city will be cut off from communications for 5 days. Mobile internet, SMS, and even the so-called whitelists, websites that are normally allowed in Russia, will not work. In addition, it will be impossible to pay by cards or withdraw cash from ATMs. The Carpet Plan is also being introduced, which closes the airspace and halts operations at all Moscow airports.
Russia has announced a May 9 parade in Moscow without military equipment. If that happens, it will be the first time in many, many years they cannot afford military equipment, and they fear drones may buzz over Red Square. This is telling. It shows they are not strong now. So we must keep the pressure by sanctions on them.
The Financial Times, citing sources, reports that internet disruptions in Moscow may be directly linked to security measures for the Kremlin dictator himself. Putin is concerned about leaks of confidential information and the risk of conspiracy or a coup attempt. Because of this, State Duma deputies have not received invitations to the Red Square parade for the first time. The dictator fears a possible drone assassination attempt, including from members of the Russian elite. The Kremlin leader is spending more and more time in bunkers, while the Federal Protective Service has tightened security measures, double checks of visitors, bans on phone use for those around him, and even surveillance of cooks and bodyguards.
Putin has always been concerned about his personal safety. This became especially evident during COVID, when people who were to meet him had to stay in isolation for 2 weeks or even 10 days before being allowed near him. But now, Putin is fully convinced that an assassination attempt or some kind of sabotage is being prepared against him, especially after the Maduro incident and the assassination of Khamenei. Of course, this has had a very strong effect on him.
The military parade, which Russia turns into a traditional propaganda show, will feature neither equipment nor veterans. Instead, there will be Russian servicemen who are also in short supply. According to the partisan movement Atesh, the command is pulling the most experienced soldiers from near Kostiantynivka just to show them at the May 9th show in Moscow. To hold positions, Russian units are throwing unprepared soldiers into attacks. The number of killed and wounded is rising sharply, and losses are breaking records.
In April 2026, 35,203 Russian personnel were confirmed killed or severely wounded. All strikes were verified through video evidence. For the 5th consecutive month, Russia is losing more personnel than it can replace through mobilization. We are confidently moving towards the figure of 50,000 liquidated occupiers per month. Mikhailo Fedorov, Minister of Defense of Ukraine, on Telegram.
The fear and panic in the Kremlin are also linked to drone attacks. On the night of the 4th of May, a drone fell and exploded 6 kilometers from the Kremlin in Moscow.
This route passed through the area of responsibility of at least 10 regiments of S-400 strategic systems and more than 80 Panzer and Tor installations. The drone successfully passed through the entire accumulated grouping in the Moscow region and struck a high-rise building on Mosfilmovskaya Street, stopping just 6.5 kilometers from the Kremlin, by analysts of the open-source intelligence.
To ensure a calm parade, the Kremlin announced a so-called ceasefire for 8 and May 9th and immediately threatened Kyiv with new attacks if Ukraine violates it in any way. At the same time, President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that no official ceasefire proposals have been received from Russia so far. In response, he announced a silence regime on the night of May 6th to give the Kremlin an opportunity to demonstrate readiness to take steps toward peace. Reported by Karina Lalayan, UATV News.
As Russian drones overwhelm Ukraine's vast air defenses, civilian volunteers are stepping in to take them down. The New York Times takes flight with a crew that's turned an old skydiving plane into a drone hunter. The characters and heroes in this case of this video are the crew of a Ukrainian civilian AN-28 aircraft, originally used for skydiving but repurposed to truck and down enemy strike drones using a mounted machine gun. The crew consists of volunteers who are not in active military service. The report explains that downing a single drone with the AN-28 costs approximately just $500. At the time of filming, the aircraft's fuselage featured 213 markings representing confirmed drone kills.
And so these mark all of the drones that you've downed?
Yeah, actually we have also this comma, so you can identify how much we did per flight.
You said it's important for you to shoot these things down over unpopulated areas.
It's a law for us. Sometimes we have to accompany it for 5 or 7 minutes. Overfly populated area, then we're able to shoot it down.
Well, that's it for today. I'm Henry Keane. Thank you so very much for being with Ukraine and watching this very episode. We appreciate it a lot. Please like, comment, subscribe to the channel. What tomorrow holds, that we don't know, but here's what we do know. UATV will be there to keep you posted on whatever it is. In Ukrainian perspective, as usual, stay safe and to